Well, this is our second session, and the first one was all about the man God created, breathed life into him, and he became a living soul. This one is all about the garden. Genesis 2:8 says, "The Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed." What's your favorite thing about the garden?
I love it when everything starts growing and it's green and you can start telling what's in the garden.
I do too. And I like eating stuff from the garden. I mean, right now we have the eggplants. I can't wait till those get ready, and the tomatoes. We got a pumpkin here that's growing, herbs, and we picked some blueberries and we made a blueberry pie.
He did.
They're delicious. So when God plants the garden, this is not just an ordinary garden, because remember, in Genesis 1, everything that God has done, he said is good, and is very good. He makes the man, and then when we come to chapter 2, we see that God did something extra special. God plants a garden, and this is not any ordinary garden. If you look at the next following verses from 9 to 14, God describes the garden for us. This is not like a green space you would find in any big city or anything like that. This is huge, probably square miles.
Right.
You couldn't walk across it in a day, probably. And as we get further, there's some really neat things that we were able to see just in this one verse about the character of God. One of the really neat things I love seeing about this particular verse is Psalm 23. And it shows that He's our good shepherd. Even in chapter 1, even in chapter 2 of Genesis, listen to that. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. First of all, God prepared a place for him, for man, and then in the presence of my enemies, Adam and God and Eve are going to be able to walk through this garden and have a relationship with him, an intimate relationship. And as much as we love our own green space in our backyards, or if you have a neighbor that has a big green space and have a garden that you can enjoy, it's just incredible. Isn't it awesome to be able to go with someone that already has a growing garden? What do you like picking and eating?
I like blueberries, strawberries, a lot of fruits.
Yeah.
I like squash.
And I remember back in the day, corn.
Oh, absolutely.
Corn. Big pots of corn, and just eat your weight in it.
Yeah.
And this is that kind of garden that God has planted something. And the neat thing about this verse is it says God placed the man in the garden. Adam could have been anywhere, but God had a unique purpose. And that's the key to this whole chapter, I guess, is what is the purpose of that garden, you think?
Well, it wasn't just to sit and enjoy and lay back. His purpose was to work it and to tend it, and I guess take pride in his work. And
Yeah.
God was teaching him, I guess.
Yeah. One of the first things that God says is that he's going to give man a task, to actually work and keep the garden. And God knows, he's the one who sees in the future, and he knows what's going to happen. So isn't it interesting that God plants a garden, and instead of Adam just looking at a corn plant that's already grown and has corn on it, he's able to see the growth cycle of all the vegetables to know that, well, that's not quite ripe yet, but that is, and to be able to know when to harvest and eat. Because we know that everything that God said is good to eat, but it needs to be ripe. So when God plants a garden, He wants us to know when is the right time to do something. Which kind of brings us all the way to the year that we're living. Years, thousands of years have passed, and a lot of times we can look at how in the world did we get here? God brought us here. God brought us to this place, and we can look and we can try to figure things out, and we know that if we go back and we look, well, God caused that to happen so we would move here, and God allowed us to know this, and He grew us to keep putting us in a place to grow and to learn. That's what I would encourage you to do. I don't know what your garden is, but I do know that if God has placed you there, it's kind of like an incubator. It's a place where God is watching, He's shepherding you, and He, like Susan said, He doesn't want you to just sit back and enjoy the garden. You need to invest time and energy in learning and observing, and don't leave the garden out of rebellion or anything. Learn and let God enlarge the garden, expand the boundaries. But you know what? If you've learned and you've grown, then God may say, you know what? I have another garden already prepared, and I'm going to place you from here, and I'm going to move you over to a whole new garden. And we can do that because we know that He's our good shepherd. He has prepared a place for us, and we don't know where the enemy is. We do know there is an enemy, but we don't know. We don't know what we don't know what he's going to look like, but we do know that He's there. And if we observe, if we follow God's commands, He's going to show us. So, friends, follow God's plan. Stay in the garden, learn and grow, and God will increase the size of it. The only reason that you would probably leave ahead of time is in 1 John 2:16. It's the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. When Adam and Eve, they looked at the fruit and they saw with their eyes, hey, this looks good for food. And then they ate it. They were very prideful of the fact that, well, I want to be like God. We'll be like God when we're in heaven with Him. And then we'll know all things. And then we'll realize, man, I wish we could have stayed in the garden. The garden has really neat things, y'all. It has a place where you can enjoy the fruits of your labor, just like, now we didn't grow the lemons for the lemonade, but we do have the blueberries for the blueberry pie. Thank you so much for picking these.
Thanks for baking it.
Man, hey, have a wonderful time studying through the rest of this book. We look forward to sharing with you as the moments come, and sharing a few things like blueberry pie and some lemonade. The thing is, enjoy the garden, observe, and let God place you there. If He's placed you there, He knows exactly what's going on, and you can have peace in that. All right? God bless you. Have a good day. Oh man, this is good. Oh.